Exposing Panama Canal's dark past. Welcome back. At first glance, the Panama Canal looks like one of humanity's greatest engineering marvels, a 50-mile waterway carved through rock and jungle, connecting the Atlantic to the Pacific, slashing shipping times by weeks, and turning global trade into something faster, cheaper, and more ruthless than ever before. But behind this miracle of steel and water lies a tale of power struggles, betrayals, and fortunes made in smoke-filled backrooms. The canal may have shortened distances for ships, but for the people who lived and died in its shadow, it stretched out the darkest lengths of greed and imperial ambition. The story begins long before the United States planted its flag over Panama. In the late 19th century, the French had already dreamed of cutting a canal through the thin strip of Central America. Ferdinand de Lesseps, the man who had overseen the successful construction of the Suez Canal in Egypt, believed he could replicate his triumph in the jungles of Panama. Investors poured in their savings. Ordinary French citizens, tailors, farmers, widows, bought stock in his company. By 1880, the Panama Project had become one of the most ambitious ventures in the world, and de Lesseps was hailed as a hero once more. But Panama was no Egypt. The Suez Canal was a flat desert. Panama was a green hell. Tropical diseases, yellow fever and malaria, swept through the labor force with terrifying efficiency. Thousands of workers, mostly Caribbean laborers brought in with promises of wages, perished under brutal heat and disease-ridden swamps. By some estimates, more than 20,000 men lost their lives during the French attempt. The canal quickly became a graveyard of both bodies and dreams. De Lesseps, once celebrated, ended his career disgraced. In France, the Panama Affair erupted as one of the biggest financial scandals of the century, with bribery, corruption, and ruin dragging down countless investors. By the turn of the 20th century, the project was abandoned, a half-dug ditch swallowed by jungle. But across the ocean, in Washington, D.C., powerful men saw opportunity where the French had failed. The United States, rising as a global power, wanted control of both oceans. A canal wasn't just an engineering project. It was a weapon, a shortcut for fleets, a gateway for commerce, and above all, a tool for empire. Enter Theodore Roosevelt. Energetic, brash, and unapologetically imperialist, Roosevelt believed that America had to speak softly and carry a big stick. The Panama Canal became his obsession, his legacy in the making. But there was a problem. Panama was still part of Colombia, and negotiations with Bogotá were dragging, stalling, frustrating American ambitions. Roosevelt, impatient as ever, decided he wouldn't let a sovereign nation stand in his way. What followed was a masterclass in backroom maneuvering and geopolitical chess. In 1903, a group of Panamanian separatists, supported and quietly encouraged by the United States, declared independence from Colombia. The U.S. Navy happened to be nearby, conveniently blocking Colombian troops from putting down the uprising. Within days, Panama was a brand new country, and within weeks, it had signed a treaty with the United States granting them rights to build and control the canal zone. For the people of Panama, independence was both liberation and betrayal. They had swapped one master for another. Construction resumed, this time under American management. Roosevelt brought in an army of engineers, doctors, and workers. Lessons had been learned from the French failure. Dr. William Gorgas, a U.S. Army physician, spearheaded a campaign against mosquitoes, draining swamps, fumigating houses, and finally bringing malaria and yellow fever under control. For the first time, the human cost slowed down. Still, the toll remained heavy. Tens of thousands of workers, many from the Caribbean islands, labored under dangerous conditions, often segregated and underpaid compared to their white American counterparts. A racial hierarchy was built into the very payroll system. Gold roll for Americans, silver roll for everyone else. By 1914, after years of blasting through mountains, damming rivers, and building massive locks, the canal opened. The first ship to pass through, the SS Ancon, slid silently across the water as Roosevelt's dream became reality. The world celebrated an engineering triumph, but beneath the cheers lay uncomfortable truths. Entire Panamanian communities had been displaced. Local sovereignty had been sidelined. Workers had been treated as expendable. And the United States had cemented its grip on one of the most strategic pieces of geography on the planet. The canal was not just about ships. It was about money. Control of the Panama Canal meant control of global trade. In its first decade alone, it reduced the distance between New York and San Francisco by nearly 8,000 miles. American exports surged. Military fleets could pivot from the Pacific to the Atlantic in days, and Washington held a bargaining chip against any nation dependent on global shipping. For Roosevelt, it was proof of American destiny. For Wall Street, it was a gold mine. But as decades passed, resentment simmered in Panama. The canal zone became a little America, fenced off, patrolled, and largely inaccessible to the Panamanians themselves. The locals watched as their own land was controlled by foreign powers, while profits and influence flowed northward. In 1964, tensions boiled over when a clash between Panamanian students and American authorities erupted into riots, leaving dozens dead. For Panama, the canal had become a symbol of humiliation as much as progress. It wasn't until 1977, under the leadership of U.S. President Jimmy Carter and Panamanian leader Omar Torrijos, that a new treaty promised to return the canal to Panamanian control. Even then, the handover was gradual, with full control only achieved on December 31, 1999. For nearly a century, a thin strip of land in Central America had been both a miracle and a curse, shaping the fate of nations and the balance of power. Looking back, the story of the Panama Canal is not just about steel gates and flowing water. It's about the cost of ambition. It shows us how dreams of progress can also carry shadows of exploitation. The French failure tells us about the dangers of overconfidence. Roosevelt's success reveals the raw power of political will, but also the arrogance of empire. The workers who died, the Panamanians who were sidelined, the investors who lost everything. These voices remind us that great projects are often built on forgotten sacrifices. When you watch a container ship glide through the canal today, stacked high with electronics, oil, and grain, it feels like a triumph of modernity. But hidden beneath the surface is a darker current of corruption scandals, silent graves, and the relentless pursuit of profit and power. Perhaps that is a canal's truest legacy, that progress is never free, and that the price is often paid by those who never reap its rewards. If you enjoyed this story, leave $1 in the comments. And remember, every marvel of history carries a shadow. Would you like me to take the same style and create another story on a different influential figure for you tomorrow?